8:45 here on the program. Shocking economic data coming out from Stats SA. The latest quarterly GDP data indicates that South Africa's GDP declined by 3.2% in the first quarter. This is a much bigger drop than estimations of around 1.6%. Can you imagine that? They thought 1.6, they got 3.2%. Let's delve more into this with Isaah Mhlanga, Chief Economist at Alexander Forbes. And speaking on a macroeconomic perspective, we've got Vusi Thembekwayo, and he'll be talking microeconomic perspective as an entrepreneur and self-made millionaire. Good to have both of you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Hi, Leah.
Okay, so at least I can smile because I've got two good-looking men sitting in front of me. But I'm finding it hard to smile about anything else this morning. Isaah, let me bring you in here. What happened with these numbers?
I think if you look at the numbers, you can see that it's a wide number of sectors that contracted: mining, manufacturing, agriculture, because of weather-related issues. But the concerning issue is it is across the whole value chain, which means it's not just an issue of load shedding. It's an issue of economic mismanagement, which meant that fixed investment isn't forthcoming. So the private sector is not yet investing because of concerns from a policy point of view, but also from a leadership point of view.
Yeah.
So these issues are going to be with us for quite some time. They need a change in how the leadership of the country approaches economic management. Of course, we also have global issues. If you look at our exports, they contracted quite significantly on a quarter-on-quarter basis, which means it's not just domestic, it's also global issues around the trade wars with China and Trump that are starting to impact the economy negatively.
Yeah. So as a businessman, how does this make you feel when you hear things like this, you see numbers like this coming out? What does this do to you?
Yeah, it's difficult, right? So, as you know, as a firm, we work with entrepreneurs. We finance entrepreneurs. We're a venture capital firm. So we try to track the data as closely as we can. And what we're seeing is exactly what Isaah is speaking about. In part, I looked at some of the numbers yesterday. I just saw gross fixed capital formation alone there. It gives you a real sense over the past 4 quarters of the trend that things are going. And the problem is that these things take a really long time to unwind. Once people sit on money, on budgets, on the supply chain, and they don't spend it, it takes a really long time for that confidence to rebuild back into the market, and even longer for them to start spending again. So to his point, we're going to be here for some time. This is not going to go away quickly.
What is some time? Help me out here.
My sense is probably the next 18 months. You know,
okay, 18 months. So, I mean, that's still manageable, is it?
It's not. And here's the challenge here. The challenge is that we're falling behind the rest of the world. So it's not just about whether or not we can manage where we are. It's about on a comparative basis, where are we with other nations, right? So if you look at our exports alone, some of our key exports, gold, and particularly in the agricultural sector, we now have other competitors from other parts of the world who are competing with us in those spaces. We had gas which came on stream, and we're supposed to be doing amazing things with gas, but because we're not getting our energy mix right, it means we're now not really investing in the gas sector, and as a result, the Mozambicans are now doing it. So it's not that the world is waiting for us to get our act together. The world moves, and we are going to have to do so much more work to catch up.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, it's basically, let me dumb it down a bit. It's between myself and another girl. This other girl's going to gym. She's on diet. She's looking amazing, and her personality is also quite nice. So people want to take her out, but I'm sitting here eating, getting fatter and more unattractive, and people are thinking, oh gosh, no, I don't think I want to take her out. I want to take the better looking woman out. And that's what's happening to us. We're not looking attractive right now at all.
Let me just jump in here. On your point about us looking attractive, we are scoring so many own goals, we don't need a competitor. That's the real challenge. So the policy uncertainty issue is a real problem. And if you don't address it, you can't fix issues. So what happens, and we're speaking about fixed capital formation, how business invests in the long-term cycle, without policy certainty, things go nowhere. So people go, what is this policy uncertainty, policy uncertainty? You can't have a Secretary General of a ruling party saying one thing, then have a treasurer saying another, and have the president saying one thing at a business dinner, but something different to a group of political activists. All of those messages, I was in London a week ago, we have an office in New York, we hear it from our teams when they're going, Vusi, this stuff is on BBC, this stuff is on CNN. So the rest of the world is watching what we're saying, and we have to be so careful. If we're not speaking with one voice now, we're never going to get this right.
Okay,
and I think perhaps if I can add to that, what is quite concerning is you had yesterday the ANC Lekotla coming and say we need the South African Reserve Bank to expand the mandate. But if you look across the world, all countries, particularly emerging markets, where you have political influence in the central bank, it doesn't add to macroeconomic stability. Give the Reserve Bank a mandate of inflation targeting price stability. Of course, it is in the interest of balanced economic growth, which means growth is incorporated in how they make monetary policy. They are not blind to it. But having to add an explicit employment target, you are shifting the responsibility away from departments that needs to be actually investing in the economy, your DTI. We have a number of DFIs that should be funding small businesses. It's not the function of the Reserve Bank. Now, if we are talking about, putting the Reserve Bank closer to politicians, the rest of the world is capitalizing, making sure that the macroeconomic policy is quite clear, which means we are working against ourselves. Other countries are quite advancing quite faster than we're doing. They're taking advantage of the trade wars, making sure that they produce the things the rest of the world is consuming. We aren't producing. So it doesn't matter how weak the currency. The currency is just the price. If you're not producing, you have nothing to sell, which is what you see in the economy.
So, we talk about the Reserve Bank and what happened yesterday. This, again, that same page you're speaking about, everybody's on a different page. You got Isaah Mhlanga saying one thing, Enoch Godongwana quickly coming out, releasing, saying, no, that's not our mandate. We're not going there. Tito Mboweni, the finance minister, saying, this is ridiculous. The ANC doesn't make these decisions. The government of South Africa makes a decision. A press release comes out from, the thing, spelling it wrong. Saying quantity easing and not even quantitative easing. Do we have the right people working for us?
Can I jump in here?
For the betterment of South Africa and South Africans.
I'll jump in and be bold, and the answer is a big no. See, the problem you have is we have, with the greatest of respect, a political order that's not driven by competence. It's driven by political affiliation. And I'll give you a simple example. In our business where we've invested, for instance, in hub infrastructure, we've gone and built hubs for entrepreneurs. We've gone into rural parts of South Africa. Try to get a municipal manager just for a meeting to tell him I'm bringing 15 million rand into your municipality and I'm going to be training young people and bring them into the formal employment sector. 18 months later, no meeting. The mayor, no meeting. And then you get criminals and thugs who go and take your hub because they can do and steal stuff on it, and you go to the police station and nobody will see you for opening a simple case. This is the issues I'm talking about facing as a business person. And if Vusi's facing it and he's sitting on SABC, what do you think happens to the everyday ordinary business person who doesn't have this platform? So the point about it is, do we have the right people on the roll? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it's one thing at the national level. It's much worse at the local municipal level where the rubber hits the road. Because what businesses need, they need water that works. They need electricity that works. They need roads that don't have potholes. Those are the simple things they need every single day to get this stuff going. So when you're talking about quantitative easing, you're having a big philosophical conversation. The entrepreneur watching this is going, whether it's quantitative, qualitative, quantity, I don't care what you call it. Can you just get me a country and an economy that's functioning?
And you didn't even add land into that, because that's another issue that we have to deal with. So we look at the primary sectors declining. 11.4% agriculture, recorded a 13.2% drop. Mining, 10.8%. Secondary sectors, manufacturing, electricity. Nothing was left unscathed.
It's all across the value chain. That is what is concerning. We would have said perhaps it's load shedding, but clearly it's not load shedding because agriculture doesn't use as much electricity. So it's much broader, which means it's going to be difficult to turn around the economy. And, unless or until government understand that it's private businesses that creates economic growth and it's private businesses that generate employment, I think we're not going to solve this issue. They have to get that first and make sure that business is their friend. And in doing that, they create the conducive environment for the likes of Vusi to be able to operate, to be able to pay suppliers, to be able to pay employees on time. Until they understand that, this economy is not going to pick up.
I have to say one more thing, and I think you're on the money with this. So here is, to the point that Isaah has made, right? So here's the hub of the issue, is I think our government needs to decide for whom it's governing. Because what it's trying to do in the broad church principle is play to everybody's game. So on the right, they've got a lot of pressure around populist politics. On the left, they've got a lot of pressure around the liberalization politics. They're trying to play both these games, and you just can't do it. You've got to make a decision. Do you want an economy that is market-driven and market-led, or do you want an economy that is state-driven and state-led? You either want to build what the US has built, or you build what China has built. What you cannot do is pander between these two identities, depending on whom it suits. So when you go quantitative easing, using the Reserve Bank money to pump money back, that's a state-led growth model. We know this. We've seen the Marshall Plan with the US. This is nothing new. It's happened so many times over. But on the other hand, you're going, we're going to create special economic zones. Now you're talking market-driven growth. So for the investor sitting outside, he's going, guys, can can you just pick a battle
Yeah.
and tell me which one you're playing with here so I know what the policy framework is and I can make my own calculations.
If you were a ratings agency, what would you do for South Africa? I mean, how would you rate us?
It's hard because I'm a South African and I love my country,
Yeah.
right? But
But just the way things are going right now, we need a wake-up call.
We do. Here is the difficulty, and I hesitate to be overly pessimistic because I also know that there are fantastic people at the wheel, Leanne. There are amazing people in government, amazing directors generals who are doing phenomenal jobs in many government departments. Yet, you still lose phenomenal talent like Vuyani Chachana and my good friend Paramani Hatebe. I worked with Vuyani when he was at Vodacom. Trust me, you don't get a more capable executive. Forget black. You do not get a more capable executive than that guy. And so if we're willing to lose that kind of talent in our public sector, for me, that says a lot about the direction we're going.
Yeah, I want to talk to that. I mean, if we can, I'm going to push you onto the SAA and the ESCOM because what's going on there? I mean, these are two good leaders. We were sold these leaders, and I agree. They come in with brilliant backgrounds. They've given plans. They've said to them, "You want to turn around? This is what you need to do. Here we go." Nothing gets done. And they resign.
Yeah.
Now, we can't even talk to their incompetence because we've been sold competent leaders who are giving plans, but nobody's listening. What's going on at our state-owned entities?
I think SOEs are linked to the rating question that you asked previously. Rating agency, at least where we are, they understand the issues that we have currently were not made over the past 1 year. They were made over the past decade, which means we are seeing the manifestation of economic mismanagement. In part, or partly, the SOEs are part of that. They are part of a economic mismanagement that we have witnessed. Yes, you can get a competent person to come and run an SAA or an ESCOM, and they come with an economic turnaround strategy, which they say, this is what we need to do. We need to cut employment by 1/3 because it's bloated. But for the politicians, it's not palatable because you're going into an election. You prevent that. When you see a minister being on a press conference talking operational issues, then you must know there are problems. That is the responsibility of the CEO who runs the company day to day. The same thing at SAA. Operational turnaround strategies are put together, but of course, the political masters at the top, they override that. So the influence of the politicians on turning around the SOEs is in part what I believe makes these SOEs not to function properly.
In a nutshell, in a phrase, what everybody's been talking about, too much political interference.
Yes.
And that appears to be happening everywhere.
Perhaps let me put it this way. If I'm overweight, I need to understand that I need to diet myself to get to the right shape. That's what South Africa requires. It's too bloated across national level, SOEs, and we need to administer the medicine that is required to turn around the economy of the country. But unfortunately for the politicians, they look at that as it's not palatable to their constituents.
So getting rid of a workforce is not palatable.
Yes.
It isn't. And yet we talk about being too bloated. And that, I think, is one of the biggest problems, is that there are too many employees in these state-owned entities. The plans all involve cutting down, but this doesn't work for unions. And like you're saying, you're trying to make everybody happy, but somebody has to make a decision for the betterment of the country. So what happens?
Look, I think... This is my final note on this. South Africa has to decide if it wants to be a value addition and value creation economy or not. And right now we're not. So when you talk about phrases like job creation, I'll say it here in the record, I've said it before, there is no such thing as job creation. There's value creation. All economies that create jobs, the job is a consequence of creating value. You don't go into someone, employ 1,000 people to do what? For whom? And at what point where do you pay these people? So we've got to make a decision about where's the value in our economy, which are those sectors, how do we invest in those sectors, how do we get real entrepreneurs to drive those sectors? Government's role is a very simple one. It's policy. Give us policy that works. The judiciary will enforce that policy. Business will drive how that policy functions in market. Don't overlap these things. The minute you start overlapping it, one end you want to pass policy, and on the other, you want to start interfering with how the markets work, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah. Isaah, let's just wrap this up and talk to what Alexander Forbes are predicting. Are we going to be in a recession before the end of this year?
It's quite possible. First quarter number is minus 3.2%. If you look at PMI leading indicators, they've been down for quite some time. So second quarter economic growth is likely to be negative as well. So we may end up in a technical recession. But technical recession for me is neither here nor there.
Yeah.
We are in a recessionary environment.
Yeah.
When you have an economy such as ours that should be growing north of 3%, growing at 0.6%, 0.8% per year, we are in deep trouble. Unemployment numbers are increasing, which means a lot more people are out of jobs. They can't support their families. That is a big problem. So we should stop talking technical recession or not. We should start talking about an economy that works, that creates jobs for the majority of people to lead successful lives.
Yeah. Vusi, wrap it up for me. I mean, what do I do? Do I pack my children in my bag and I go find a new home?
No.
Or what do I do as a
Just-
normal South African? Keep the politicians out there.
Yeah.
What can I do?
Well, I'll tell you what we're doing in our household. 3 very simple things. First is be pragmatic about your plan. The second is live within your means. And the third is take a very long-term view, because this is not going to turn tomorrow. So don't overcommit yourself, don't overbond yourself. To the entrepreneurs that we mentor, that we manage, I'm saying to all of them, if you've got capital, hold on to it. Don't splurge, don't invest in new things. Wait this cycle out, because you're going to need cash to survive the next 18 months. These are very simple, basic things every single South African watching this can do. Just stay steady. Be committed, because it will turn. But turns and upswings are only work for people who are in the market. So if you sink yourself now, by the time this turn and upswing come, you won't be able to catch the wave. And you want to be there to catch the wave.
Guys, thank you so much for talking to us. I could have carried on for another hour, but it's the news time. So I have to bring the news. Thank you so much. Vusi Thembekwayo, always a pleasure. And Isaah Mhlanga, thank you very much as well for coming in and chatting to us. He, of course, is the Executive Chief Economist at Alexander Forbes. All right, just gone 8 o'clock. Let's get the latest news bulletin.